Hey, this is Ibrahim from BTP Media Group. Normally, it would be multiple of us, just going at these subjects, but we're trying to change some things up. Today, I'm just going to do a quick hit on Biden's loan forgiveness program. Now, as many of you already know, Biden had a press conference where he says he's going to do a loan forgiveness program that's going to be $10,000 for individuals who make $125,000 or less, or families who make $250,000 or less, with the extra $10,000 of loan forgiveness going to people who qualify for Pell Grant at any point in time when they was filling out their FAFSA application. And I thought these numbers was interesting because, as we know, from looking at the data, only about 1 in 4 Black Americans go to school. That's Black and Black immigrants combined. And we just haven't had those opportunities to go to school, for multiple generations and to build wealth. And as we've seen over the last 40 years, college tuition has tripled. Right. So, I was thinking about that $125,000. A good article I like to use is this. It's like an interactive article by Wall Street Journal. It says I believe it's called "What Percentage Are You?" And you can just go on there and kind of play with the numbers and see who makes what and fall in what income group. And what you learn from the Wall Street Journal application is that only about 98% of millennials make more. I mean, only 98% of millennials make less than 125,000, right? And I'm saying only, I'm just being funny, but basically what you see for millennials and Xers, right? Only 93% of Xers make more than that 125,000. So basically Biden's numbers is so high that it basically encompasses everybody that went to school. When you think about loan forgiveness or any forgiveness program, when it comes to debt, you think about those who are at the bottom and getting buried in the debt. But when you make the threshold so high, practically everybody gets it, right? Even when you think about the Pell Grant, right? The Pell Grant qualification is for those who qualify for Pell Grant. And why it is true that if you come from a household that's in extreme impoverished condition, making 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, right? 40,000, you have an 80% chance of qualifying for the Pell Grant. What a lot of people don't understand is that, there's not a household income cutoff for the Pell Grant. So about 45% of Pell Grant recipients came from households that made between 50 and 60,000. About 20% of Pell Grant recipients came from households that make 60 to 70,000. Right. And then when you get into the higher incomes, like 70 to 80,000, you got about 11% of Pell Grant recipients. And even from 80,000 to $100,000, around 5% still qualify for the Pell Grant. Right. And it's just interesting to see that even when you look at a number like 70K for income, only 9% of Blacks make 70,000 or more. Right. While you have about 18% of whites making 70,000 or more. 25% of Asians make 70,000 or more. So as Biden, raised the metrics high enough, he raised it so high that basically everybody qualified. Now, um, Wharton, Penn Wharton Business School, they did a a budget model for who Biden's student loan debt will benefit the most. And what they came up with is about 70% of overall debt forgiveness will go to Americas that are in the upper 60% of household income. So what you see is that while it will benefit some of those of us who are from the first and the second quintiles of having that lower household income, that this is basically going to be like a windfall, just a bunch of cash being flushed into white America. And what you see is, Biden kind of framed this as he's going to stabilize middle America, right? This is all about middle America. And during his press conferences, he talks about, how he was in school and his dad got denied some loans, and his dad was, as a solid middle class worker, wanted the best for Biden and Biden parents. And he wanted Biden to go to college, and he needed loans to be able to afford these things. And Biden's whole career, he's been, advocating for middle class and upper middle class white America. I'm kind of confused because I see some rhetoric coming from certain politicians as if student loan debt is like an albatross around Black America's neck. And what we find out is, it's not that we just can't afford college. We can basically afford anything in America. I think our second most debt is bad auto loans, right? We seen in 2008 where, we was getting these subprime mortgages and subprime loans, and we couldn't afford our home. But if you look more into Biden's program, right? So his income driven repayment program basically says, hey, you know, this pause that I have on student loan is going to be up. It's going to be up December 31st. So at the end of this year, next year rolling around, you'll have to get back to making your student loan payments, right? The deferment is done. And what he's saying is that at one point in time, you would have to spend 10% of your income for your tuition loans. Now he's dropping that down to 5%, right? And just speaking on behalf of our community, in our community, 10% of zero is zero, right? Most of us was deferring our loans. We defaulted on our loan. We just didn't have the money to pay. So what Biden comes along now and he's saying, hey, I'm going to give you up to $20,000, right? $10,000 if you just qualify, $20,000 if you was a Pell Grant recipient. It makes under that 125,000 threshold. But when you think about it, only 1 in 4 Blacks even go to college, right? So it leaves out 75% of this total Black population, right? And it was Biden that said, hey, you guys have my back, I got your back, right? But when you see his policy, it doesn't happen like that. CNN heard a poll that said 95% of Black businesses got cut out the PPP loan, right? So not only were we not getting aid when the government was giving aid for small businesses, now as they're giving college debt relief, it just cuts out a whole swath of Black America. And for those of us who are paying, there's a study that says, Black debt is around 23,000, while white debt is around 15,000. And then 10 years later, you'll see, because of the interest being accrued, that Black debt grows as white debt shrinks. Now, some information that came out, that 14.6 million debt is collected from the top 10% of America, right? So even the wealthy are taking out student loan debt. Now they are able to pay it off. And about 10%, about I think he said about 10 million about 10 million student loan borrowers would have less than $10,000 in student loan. So what you will see is this student loan debt will knock out a nice percentage of student loan borrowers, right? I believe that's around 25% of student loan borrowers, right? While leaving others with the ability to either knock it out if they apply for the Pell Grant or just have a significant decrease, right? But who is that going to be? Is that going to be our community? I know people in our community, because they weren't able to pay their student loan debt, they owe tens of thousands of dollars, right? We're talking 30, 40, 50, 60, some own up into the 6 figures worth of debt, right? Off a promise that they will be able to go to college, get out of college, get these jobs, and be able to pay off the loan. And what I'm saying is that even with Biden's income driven repayment program, which basically takes it from 10% of your income, which would be applied to what you would pay monthly to your student loans, is now 5%. But in December, do you have that 5% to be able to pay, right? And under Biden's new program, you got to pay for 20 years, right? Right now, most of us is paying 10% of nothing, right? And during COVID, everything was, put on pause. You had the moratorium freeze for student loan payment. Well, Now that goes back into a fact. You have to think about it. Hey, do you have 5% of your budget? Say you got $50,000 in student debt. I'll use me as an example. I have $35,000 in student debt. Under this, I will qualify for the $20,000, right? That takes me down to 15,000. Now come January, right? So I get a student loan deduction. Now come January, do I have enough money in my budget to pay out a few $100s on the student loan that I wasn't paying for the last, 2, 3 years, right? Like, do I have that in my budget? And I'm looking at this for a lot of us, we're going to be left with trying to figure out how to allocate these resources for this money that these student loan holders now want, right? And when you think about most of our debt, like there's stories coming out all over social media where you see people say, hey, I went to school and I accumulated like $50,000, $60,000 in student debt, and now I owe like $150,000 because of the interest. What Biden plan does is basically an interest reduction program, right? For our population, right? For American freedmen, right? It's an interest reduction program, and what I mean by temporarily, you'll see your student loans decrease, right? Like it'll kick in, you'll get the 10 or the 20,000, but the problem is what happens in January when it's time for you to start paying those loans, right? Does the interest kick back in? And what I don't want to see is like 5, 7, 8, 10 years from now, right? You went from 70 to 50 and now you're at 70 again and now you're at 80 again. And the problem is, what happens when student loan debt basically become American freedmen or Black American debt? Do they still treat it the same, right? Or do they, criminalize you more when this debt is placed in the lap of Black America because Biden plan was able to alleviate many white families who was already paying on their debt, right? Because as we know, white families have over 90% of America's household wealth, while Black Americans only have 2, right? Like, we're just on shoestring budgets. So what you see here with Biden's plan is he takes it from 10% to 5%. But if you borrow, I believe if you borrow less than $12,000, is you don't have to pay for 20 years, you have to pay for 10 years. So what he's basically doing is trying to incite people who once was not paying student loans. He's trying to get you excited about paying student loans. And the way he gets you excited about paying student loans is by giving you a voucher, right? This is for our community, right? This is specific to American freedmen. They're going to get this student loan voucher, right? And now it's going to be like, oh, I went from 50 to 30. And in your head, you're going to say, well, I can tackle this 30. Well, do you have that budget allocated in your resources to be able to, spend those dollars out towards your student loan payment? And I'm not like this is coming fast. December 31st is when it's cut off, and it's right around the corner. I find it, you know, extremely problematic that you hear, whispers not only coming from the right, but just certain people on social media, especially our white Americans who say, I didn't go to college, or my son didn't go to college, right? Why does he have to pay more taxes for you to get student loan debt relief? That's not how any of this works. If anybody should be complaining, it should be us, right? We didn't get land grants. We didn't get included in the New Deal, right? We didn't get to use the GI Bill initially. Welfare was around for 30 years before blacks was able to even apply and use it. And when we was able to receive those benefits, the man couldn't be in a household. Nobody gets more government resources than white America, right? And it's funny that when you see all of these stories come out of the, white businesses and politicians that qualify for PPP loan forgiveness, they didn't say, no, no, no. Don't give me $500,000 or up to millions of dollars of PPP loan forgiveness. I'm going to pay those loans back because I'm an American and that's what American does. But when it comes to us, they saying don't give them nothing, right? And people like Elizabeth Warren, she was pushing for like $50,000 student loan recovery. What you see with this incremental student loan recovery that Biden is doing, it basically doesn't affect our community positively at all, because the The problem is, even though you have debt reduction, you will still have that debt, right? Like, what do we do about this debt when it comes to bailing out the auto industry, when it comes to bailing out the airline industry, when it comes to bailing out big corporations, even when it comes to small businesses and family-owned businesses that were predominantly white, including white farmers, right? What you see, the government impact, how they come in and resolve those issues is they drop the bag on them, right? They come and they like do what government is supposed to do. They move those economic barriers out of the way so these companies can be prosperous. Well, what you see was something that affects us, and it only affects a small percentage of us. A small percentage of us, right? Only 1 in 4 blacks qualify, but still, because you will see black people get a smidget of relief, they're not even like going to remove that debt, right? This is basically, to me, this is a debt decrease program, right? And it may just be temporarily. And I think Biden talked to some of the student loan lenders and basically found out a way to kind of incite Americans into paying a loan that they once said they were never going to be able to pay. And I believe there's a bunch of us that's still looking at those loans and saying, man, $10,000, $20,000 ain't nothing. Give it to me. I'll happily take it. In my case, I'm going to take it. But still, like, how do I pay off the rest of this, right? And I think that's what we got to ask for. And I'm just asking you guys, right? Is this what you guys asked for? Was this one of the promises you wanted to receive when you went to the election polls? If you voted for Biden or if you didn't vote for Biden, right? You're still an American citizen. Is this one of the things that was important to you, right? And is this dollar amount satisfactory to you? And if not, I encourage people to call their congressman, call their congresswoman, and tell them, hey, like, this is not enough. I'm upset with this program. This program doesn't benefit the vast majority of my community, and it doesn't significantly benefit those who even qualify for it. So I just think we got to get on the ball. I think we really have to push back. I seen Elizabeth Warren and other politicians celebrating this as if this was going to really put a dent into black debt. And what you'll see is the racial wealth gap exacerbated once you give whites this relief for them to be able to have an additional $10,000, $20,000 in their account and spend it as they see fit, while black people apply this voucher to their debt. But it's a debt that we never was able to really pay because we just haven't lived an American life. If you can give over $50 billion to Ukraine, if you can give hundreds of $billions to small businesses, right? Small businesses worth millions and millions of dollars, then I think you can come with a better plan that can remedy some of the harms that we go through in this country and some of our economic barriers. I think we have to like galvanize and just send Biden a message and tell him this is not enough and this won't do. I appreciate you guys listening to me today. I'm Ibrahim Tanner. This is BTP. Thanks.